friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this week's reading vlog. Now, I am going to be reading fantasy for this entire week, which I am very excited about because that is my favorite genre. But here is our tentative TBR. Now, you might be thinking, Emily, this is a little bit crazy. Yes, it is. I don't think I will be reading every single book in this pile, but these are books that I am hoping I can get to. So, really quickly, we have A Reaper at the Gate by Sabaa Tahir. I have this obviously in a physical copy. I also have the audiobook out from Libby for like the next 5 or so days. So that's the reason this has made it on this list, is I am hoping that I can at least listen to it via audiobook, which will make my life a little bit easier. And, you know, I am also excited to get another installment of An Ember in the Ashes read, which hopefully then means that I can complete it in another, finishing every series I'm in the middle of a vlog. So this is our first goal for the week. Cross your fingers for me. And then I have Zodiac Academy. This was on my March TBR and I did not get to it. So we're adding it to the TBR for this week in the hopes that it gets picked and read. You know, better late than never. The same thing goes for The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This was on my March TBR. This was also on my books to read in 2025 list. So I kind of double whammied by failing to read this one last month. So I figured I would throw it on this TBR for the week in the chance that I may get to it. And then we have our reread for the month, which is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This is one of my favorite all-time series. This is a Roman Empire series for me, and I am caught up at the moment. So there's just a part of my soul that wanted to start over. So when I pulled the prompt to pick a reread, I, of course, chose this one. So hopefully we get around to it. This is the lowest priority, though, because it is, in fact, a reread. And I'm trying to make a dent in my ridiculous TBR. Not that I'm mad about it, because, you know, one can never have too many books. But I'm trying to get the, 300-plus book TBR a little under control. And then our last pick is Murtagh by Christopher Paolini. This is a book that I am super, super excited to get to. I grew up reading the Inheritance Cycle, or the Eragon series. So when he announced that he was kind of circling back and writing more in this world, I could not wait to get my mitts on this book. And now that I have it, and it is on my April TBR, I am hoping I get to it this week. So I am not entirely sure where I will start. I suppose, you know, the next time you see me, we will find out where I went. But I honestly will probably pick up one of the books that I have via audiobook. That way I can listen to it and fold my giant mountain of laundry. It was laundry day and I worked from home, which meant that essentially all I did was just throw in wash and switch it over and throw in wash and switch it over. So now I have a mountain of unfolded laundry that needs to be attended to. So if I put in an audiobook, I can, you know, throw that all on the bed and maybe make a dent in it. So that would probably mean that we would end up with one of these two. So stay tuned to see where we go from here, but it will probably be one of these. And I will talk to you when I am halfway through my first book for this week. All right, my friends, it is Tuesday, day 2 of this reading vlog, and I am here to check in with you guys because I'm about 2/3 of the way through Zodiac Academy. Now, I have some thoughts, I have some feelings about this book, so let's talk about it. If you are unfamiliar with the premise of this book, it follows Tori and Darcy Vega, a pair of twins. They are freshly 18 and out of foster care and trying to eke out an existence in Chicago. One night when Tori is out at the bar, she's approached by a stranger who she thinks initially that she manages to shake off until she discovers that he has followed her home, which is weird and creepy and a little bit stalkerish. But he proceeds to tell the girls that he is a professor at the Zodiac Academy in the Kingdom of Solaria in the world of the Fae. And even more incredibly, the girls are in fact the heirs to the Kingdom of Solaria. Their parents, the king and queen, when they were first born, felt that the girls were in danger and decided to place them with human parents and take those parents' kids. And since then, pretty much everybody has perished except for Tori and Darcy. And when they turned 18, their power became like a signal to anybody in the Fae world that they were alive and well. And Orion, this stranger, has been sent to retrieve them because they are, in fact, the heirs. And he convinces them to come back with him, but like basically through bribery. He tells them that if they go to the academy, they get free room, free board, and are able to claim their inheritance from the king and queen. So the girls decide to go back. And on their first night there, they end up participating in the Awakening, a la the title of this book. The Awakening is essentially where any 18-year-old Fae who is entering the academy for the first time has their elemental powers unlocked. So in this world, Fae is kind of an overarching term, and then within that, there are the orders, so like vampires, dragon shifters, sirens, werewolves, all of those. And then depending on what star sign you are born under and your heritage, that kind of determines what elemental power you end up with. And most Fae end up with just a singular power. If you are powerful, you will end up with two. Tori and Darcy's biological father, the Savage King, is the only Fae in living memory to have had three. So it kind of comes as a shock to everybody when Tori and Darcy end up being able to access all four elemental powers: wind, water, earth, and fire, or air, not wind. Once the girls have had their powers revealed, they are forced to choose a house, and they're told they cannot choose the same house because it will skew the power scale in the academy. So Darcy ends up choosing air, Tori ends up choosing fire, and this is kind of the point where they start realizing that they are maybe perhaps not welcome. So when the king and queen of Solaria died, the Celestial Council ended up taking over the rule of the kingdom. And those families ended up having four heirs. The four heirs are now sophomores in the academy, all hold at least two elemental powers, and are heads of the houses. So they are very, very powerful and at the top of the food chain here. And this is very much like a dog-eat-dog world. So, the kids in this academy kind of tend to do rather horrible things to each other in the name of like establishing a pecking order. And the adults really don't do much to stop it. So the heirs very much take issue with Tori and Darcy. First of all, they are very, very powerful, more powerful than the heirs. And then secondly, they have a claim to the throne just by right of birth. So the girls are immediately a threat to these four, and these four decide that the best way to deal with this threat is to basically bully the girls out of school before they have a handle on their powers. And going into this book, I knew it would be a bully romance. This book has made its rounds on the internet, so I was familiar with what I was getting into, but I did not expect how unrelenting the bullying is. I kind of thought we would get some slice of life, some classes, the girls forming friendships of their own. And we kind of do, but it's very minimal. That's not really what the authors decided to develop. It's almost like every encounter the girls have is intended to put them in the crosshairs of the heirs. And so just every class they go to, every tutor assignment they have, everything ends up with them, getting bullied or having an unfortunate, nasty encounter with the four heirs. So I'm really enjoying the world. I'm enjoying the magic system. I like the two girls. I find Tori a little bit grating sometimes, but not too bad. And I do very much like Darcy. But like I said, the bullying is just relentless. We don't get a breather. I mean, obviously the girls don't get a breather, but we don't get a breather either as a reader. And on top of that, it's very frustrating because the girls are clearly intended to be very, very powerful. And in general, they are very like independent, self-sufficient, badasses who stand up for themselves, don't take any shit. And so for them to kind of continue to get like the beat down from these guys is highly frustrating. Like one of the heirs is a vampire, and how a vampire acquires power in this world is to take someone's blood. And he decides that Tori would be a great personal source. And so now she's basically his walking blood bank, and she can't do anything about it. She can't fight him off. And I kind of expected that maybe we would get like more development in their power at this point in the book, and we kind of haven't. They're still kind of at square one and trying to defend themselves from these guys. And I have heard on the internet that the two of them aren't really able to start like giving as good as they get until book 2. So I may be in it for the long haul, but I am enjoying this. I think this is going to end up probably being like a 3.5 star read, but I will check in with you guys when I am done with this book and let you know how I'm feeling. I suspect I'll be able to finish it tonight, and then we will start on our next book this evening. So I've officially finished Zodiac Academy, and this is going to be a 3.5 star read. And I stand by everything I said about this book in the halfway check-in, and then I have a couple things to add. First of all, the ending kind of felt like an escalation of what's been going on the whole book. There was like no big plot twist. Like the whole plot of this book is the bullying. And I wish that there was more plot to it. There is like underlying things that seem to be like percolating. Like, for example, whatever is going on with the nymph population, but we didn't really get much of an explanation or a deep dive into that. I assume it comes up in the later books because this is like a 12-book series, but I was kind of hoping that we would get more like straight plot. I realize right now the plot is the heirs versus the twins, who will come out on top. Will the twins be able to establish themselves? But none of that was ever like solved or answered in this book. So that's like the thing that really knocked this down for me as far as ratings go. But I really enjoyed, like I said, the world, the magic system, our characters. I do think that these two have questionable taste in men. I cannot stand any of the Celestial heirs. They managed to get themselves entangled with at least 2 of them romantically, even though there is some like bullying happening. Well, not some bullying, a lot of bullying happening. And yet they still like give into the physical attraction. And that's a little bit wild to me. Like, why would you trust somebody that way who's been horrific to you? And then also, one of these two seems to have inappropriate fantasies about her teacher. So these two have seriously questionable taste in men, which makes for a highly entertaining book. But like, real life would not be cool. So between the questionable judgment about the boys and then the lack of like any significant plot developments, I just ended up rating it 3.5 stars. Those are really the 2 biggest reasons why I enjoyed everything else. And so I'm going to continue this series, and I am hoping that things develop from here and I get a little bit more plot, a little more backstory on like the world and the world's issues. So enjoyable, but looking forward to future installments in the hope that they deliver a little something more. Which then leads us to, where am I going in our TBR from here? And my answer for you is, I already tried picking up the Shadow of the Gods and promptly could not focus, so we're not doing this one. Which then, if I recall, I said that we were not going to do the Bridge Kingdom at least not right away. I want to get like at least 2 books read properly first before rereading that. So it is down to these 2. And honestly, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this in physical form, and I'm going to start this in audiobook. And I will say for this book, it's going to not be one that I really check in or talk about much because it's the 3rd book in a series, and I feel like talking about it would spoil too much of like what has already happened. So I think it's kind of okay to run them like parallel to each other in this vlog. But I am going to be picking up and reading Murtagh, and I am so excited about this. I think I said when I started this video that I loved the Inheritance cycle. I was so bummed when they didn't continue making the Eragon movies, even though, you know, the movie is never as good as the book for the most part. There's, you know, a few rare exceptions. But I still loved seeing that world come to life on screen, and so I was a little bummed when they didn't continue. And then, you know, once in a while I reread the series just to feel all the feelings that I felt back then when I first read it. So I'm excited to go back to Alagaësia and see what Murtagh is up to. So I'm going to get started on this book. And to be honest, I probably won't check in with you again tonight, but I will see you tomorrow, and I will let you know how far I got into this book and my thoughts and feelings so far. And then I will kind of try and keep you in the loop on this one, although like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to ruin it for anybody who has not read it. But if you have not read The Ember and the Ashes, you absolutely should. Absolutely should. So I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, my friends, it is officially day 3 of our reading vlog, and I am about halfway through Murtagh by Christopher Paolini. Now, about this book, I don't want to speak too much on the events that happened in the Inheritance cycle. Just know that Murtagh was a very prominent side character in those books, and in this book, he is trying to kind of achieve his own redemption arc. He feels that because of his actions in the original series that he needs to atone. So at the start of this book, he is traveling Alagaësia with Thorn by his side, just kind of exploring, expanding their worldview, encountering new people and new things and new ideas. Part of it is he feels that his, formal education in magic was lacking because Galbatorix did not want to teach him anything that would necessarily make him a threat. So he's kind of trying to, expand his knowledge of like magic and hone his abilities as well. And at the start of this book, he encounters something that seems a little unsavory. He's kind of been asking around for whispers and information to kind of try and help the new queen behind the scenes, and therefore encounters a fairly, unsavory character who shows him 2 things. 1, a stone that seems to reek of brimstone and black magic, and 2, a amulet or something that protects someone from any kind of magic and can't be undone. So, and he attributes that to the creator having used wordless magic. In this world, magic is confined by the ancient language. And the reason being is magic can be used with words or even, thought words. But the idea is that the ancient language gives the magic guidance and intent. And wordless magic is thought to be dangerous because it can easily go astray. And if you use too much magic, it will kill you. So in general, it's just good to have your spells constrained by the ancient language. So it's highly unusual that someone is enchanting protective amulets using a wordless magic. So Murtagh wants to get to the bottom of this, and thus starts our adventure. So he, goes to try and collect more information, and when he does so, he ends up getting a side quest, and so the plot carries on. And I don't want to speak too much about who his love interest is, because I feel like if you are unaware of the events of the first book, that would be kind of a spoiler. But let's just say that his feelings have not died. He still holds a torch for her, and on some level, he is doing this in order to secure her safety. So I am like thoroughly entertained by this. We have kind of gotten to the point in the story where Murtagh has somewhat knowingly placed himself in a difficult situation. You know, he's trying to assess whether or not this is as bad as he thinks it is, and if it is, he thinks that he still has the capability to walk out of this trap alive. And we're starting to realize that maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew by trying to confront the, creator of these amulets. And there might be more to the story than he is aware. He is starting to realize that this person might be pulling more strings than he thought. And she might have something to do with the events of like the original 4 books. She might, be a mastermind, so to speak. But then if she's the mastermind, is there somebody behind her? And so I am very entertained by this book. I will say I forgot how slowly these books move. This is definitely a book that is going to be taking its time. So if you do not love slower paced books, maybe this is not necessarily for you. We get, quite a few travel montages and that sort of thing. But I am happy to be back in this world. And so far, the story is living up to all of my hopes. So with that being said, I will check back in with you guys when I am done with this book. Day 4 of this reading vlog, and I have some updates for you guys. I have officially finished Murtagh, and I have some thoughts and I have some feelings. First of all, I am going to be rating this book 4 stars. I very, very much enjoyed it. I think a big part of my enjoyment is nostalgia, but it is a well-written book with a really cool plot. I just found that it was a little bit slower paced than I would have preferred, and that is the biggest reason why I got knocked down from 5 stars. But as I kind of mentioned in my halfway check-in, Murtagh is exploring and investigating the kind of dark magic happenings that on the periphery of society. And in doing so, lands himself in some hot water. And so the second half of this book is kind of him solving how he's going to potentially get himself out of this mess, if he can get himself out of this mess. And even if he does, what does this still mean for the world in general? If he succeeds here, that still doesn't solve, the underlying issues. If this sorceress's strings are being pulled by somebody else, can he address that? Or are we going to need another book after this? I suspect that we will get another book after this, just considering how this one left off. I will say, after the slowest of slow burns, we are finally getting some progress on the romance between Murtagh and his love interest, which makes my heart happy because honestly, I want to see these two happy and together and successful and their rule and reign to stop being threatened. But I suspect we will have, several more books before that happens. I've also heard that Christopher Paolini plans to write more in this universe, like prequel stories as well. There's been murmurings of a prequel story about how Saphira's egg was stolen and a prequel story of Brom and all of that. In addition, I will say about this book specifically, I really, really like Thorn. That is Murtagh's dragon, if you're unaware. This is, the red dragon on the cover here. But Thorn is hilarious. I like him more than I liked Saphira, and I loved Saphira. So if you are looking for a dragon with some snark and some personality, but who's also trying to recover from the trauma that he has been through, here we are. Thorn is a character himself. He and Murtagh can speak mind to mind. So, if you have read Fourth Wing, but you never read The Inheritance Cycle, maybe pick up The Inheritance Cycle and or this book. With that being said, we have finished our second book for this video, and I am pleased to report that I am 2/3 of the way through the third book for this video. So we are at the third book in the Ember Quartet, or, if you're unfamiliar, the first book is An Ember in the Ashes. And I don't want to speak too much about what's happening in this book, just because it is the third book in a series. It will spoil what happened in the first two, but really quickly I'll touch on the plot of An Ember in the Ashes, and then try to give you an update, a spoiler-free update about where we are in this one. But An Ember in the Ashes follows Elia and Elias. Elia is a part of the Scholar faction of the world who have been conquered and treated as slaves by the Martial Empire, and Elias is a mask or a soldier in training, an elite soldier in training for the Empire. An Ember in the Ashes starts out with Elias' family being attacked by a mask, or as I said, an elite soldier of the Empire. The supposed cause of this is that her brother seems to have some involvement with the rebellion, of which she is completely unaware, but her brother is arrested, her grandparents perish, and Elia ends up on the run. And while she is on the run, she ends up encountering the rebellion her brother was supposedly helping, and tries to get them to agree to assist her in breaking him out of prison. After all, he is now her last surviving family member. And the rebellion agrees to it if she will help them spy on the commandant of the military academy that trains masks. And that is kind of a bit of how we meet Elias, and how Elias and Elia end up crossing paths. But she ends up actually serving his mother, who is the commandant of the academy, and his mother is a psychopath, a sadist, all of the above. And, she's starting to realize that maybe she took on more than she thought by agreeing to spy, but is unwilling to back down because this is her brother. So at this point in the series, our settings have changed, people have, grown, relationships have changed, and in the vaguest of terms, I'm not loving what is going on with Elias in this story. I feel like it's not fair, I guess. Not that the world is fair, but it's not fair that he essentially committed to something without realizing the full ramifications. And of course, when his mentor passes away, before she dies, she says, hey, I'm really sorry that you're about to experience this burden, and for reals. And it's just, I'm not loving that aspect of the story. I realize it's important because the underlying issue in this world is that the Scholar people entrapped the Jinn race, and entrapped and killed the Jinn race, and their king, the Jinn king, is seeking vengeance on the Scholar people for their crime against his people. The Scholar people are kind of already oppressed by the Martial Empire, so there's a lot of this is kind of a story about trying to thwart someone's vengeance, and how our two main characters get caught up in that whole plot line. But they are well and truly embroiled at this point, and I am just it feels a little bit manufactured to keep Elias and Elia apart. That component of his stewardship does not need to be connected to their relationship this way. So I'm a little annoyed that we're on book 3 and their relationship has not really developed beyond them both acknowledging how they feel about each other, solely because of the circumstances in this world. So not loving that, but I am genuinely intrigued about the plot line and where this all is going. And I'm kind of excited to see where the Jinn King takes all this, because he's really pulling all the strings behind everything that is happening, and the political machinations and the coups and all that stuff. So I am very excited to get to the end of this book, but I will, of course, try and continue to keep it all vague so that I'm not spoiling anything for you guys. But as I said before, if you have not picked up this series, you absolutely should. It is excellent. But I am going to finish listening to the audiobook for this book and do some house chores. And I will probably end up checking in with you tomorrow, which is Friday, and we will kind of wrap up this reading vlog then. And so, my friends, we have officially reached the last day of this vlog. It is Friday, and I have finished A Reaper at the Gates earlier today, and I have thoughts. I am going to be reading this book 4.5 stars. I love this series. I have not rated one of these books less than 4.5 stars so far, so hopefully the final book does not disappoint me. But I stand by what I said in the halfway check-in. Elias's storyline is starting to piss me off a little bit, but I also realize it is somewhat important to the plot, what he is doing and what he is trying to achieve. I'm just irked that we're 3 books in and our MMC and FMC really have not had like a ton of time together. But that's kind of this whole series is tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And this book is absolutely no exception. By the time this book is over, we are like, can these guys just catch a break? Like, seriously, I have never, well, that's not true. It has been a very long time since I have hated a character and wanted a character dead as much as I want the Commandant in this series dead. Kyrus deserves an unfortunate fate, in my personal opinion. So hopefully we get that in the 4th book because I am so ready. There are times where characters have had the opportunity to put an end to her shenanigans and have not done so. So I'm a little bit lost on that. Like why if you've read this book, maybe you understand where I'm going with this, but there's somebody who will not be in the next book, who had plenty of opportunities to end Kyrus and did not do so. So I don't know, but I am rooting for the good guys. You know, what's kind of wild is like the Jin Kang. I am not really upset at everything that he is doing, even though it is leading to so many tragedies, because I think that his wrath and his sorrow is very much understandable. I'm more so angry at the people who are like allowing him to manipulate them and the like loss of life that seems to follow every time a human fails to withstand his manipulations. So that is kind of where I'm standing with this series. Thoroughly enjoying it. I'm actually thinking that I will pick up the 4th book in a video I have planned later this month. So hopefully the Ember Quartet is a series that I finish, but I am going to wrap up this video. This was our TBR, and we finished 3 out of 5, which I am not too upset about. We finished, of course, A Reaper at the Gates, which was a 4.5 star read. Zodiac Academy, which was our first book in this video and was a 3.5 star read, and I will also be continuing with this series. And then Murtagh, which was a 4-star read, just solely based on the pacing. So, if you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you would like to stick around for a while, please subscribe. Either way, I very much appreciate you joining me. Have a good one. Bye!